This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. The world is being prepared right now for the acceptance of a global dictatorship. And that is something which is in fact preordained, which your Bible tells you about. Now, I say it's being prepared because the beginning of this development is already manifesting itself on this earth today. I like to read to you from an article by the American Institute for Economic Research, which was published on March 12, 2011, saying the following. Few people have recognized how pandemic-spurred crackdowns have devastated democracy around the world. Emergency proclamations have entitled presidents and other governmental officials to seize vast new powers previously forbidden to them. In October, Freedom House issued a report which warns that since the pandemic started, the condition of democracy and human rights has worsened in 80 countries. According to new estimates, the number has climbed since then to at least 100 countries. The article goes on to say, when the pandemic arrived in America, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo set the standard when he effectively declared that he was entitled to inflict any burden on his state's residents to save just one life. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer prohibited anyone from leaving their home to visit family or friends. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti banned people from walking or bicycling outside, and then he also talked about the fact that they are prohibited to walk on sand if it falls into a certain category. Australia imposed some of the most heavy-handed restrictions. In August, the state of Victoria dictated an 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew for the Melbourne area and prohibited people from venturing more than 3 miles from their residence. Britain unleashed some of the most absurd restrictions. In June, it prohibited couples who live in different homes from having sex indoors. New Zealand has imposed 4 separate lockdowns in its pursuit to banish the virus from the island, repeatedly placing residents in the capital city under house arrest. In October, the government announced it was creating quarantine centers for anyone who tests positive and refuses to obey government orders. In Uganda, only the government may hand out food aid. Anyone else who does so can be charged with murder, since they might do it in a disorderly fashion or way, attract crowds, and thereby spread the coronavirus. In Kenya, police killed at least 15 people during brutal crackdowns on alleged violators of lockdown decrees. Amnesty International declared that the COVID-19 pandemic provided the perfect storm for indiscriminate mass violence by the police. Many regimes have expanded the definition of fake news to justify repression. An Associated Press article in January explained why Californians were denied access to the information that determines the fate of their freedom. State health officials said they rely on a very complex set of measurements that would confuse and potentially mislead the public if they were made public. In other words, Californians are too stupid to understand what's going on. The pandemic's precedents, the article says, pose a long-term peril for liberty around the globe. The media in some Western nations were the biggest cheerleaders for obliterating limits on political power. Federal Judge William Stickman IV declared in September, broad population-wide lockdowns are such a dramatic invasion of the concept of liberty in a free society as to be nearly presumptively unconstitutional. And then the article concludes by saying, COVID-19 crackdowns are a warning for people to be wary of oppressive governments, regardless of their purported mandate or political affiliation or agenda. Now, this article doesn't even talk about other countries which could have been mentioned. Countries in Europe, countries such as Germany, Austria, Italy, France, Spain, and yes, also the democracy in the Middle East, the state of Israel, which has now again instituted lockdown after lockdown after lockdown and other very restrictive measures. So now, I said before, people in all the world are being prepared for a prophesied worldwide dictatorship. So when it comes, they are ready to accept it. And the Bible makes this very clear. I like to read to you from the book of Revelation, chapter 13. And I like to read verses 3 and 4, talking about a military and political power, originally referring to the Roman Empire, the fall of the Roman Empire, and its revival. And it would be in existence until the very end of this age, until the time of Christ's return. But it's not just talking about only the power. It's also talking about that last leader of that power, which is right now coming together in Europe. And here we read in verse 4, or let's say beginning in verse 3. I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, talking about the fall of Rome. And his deadly wound was healed, also talking about a political defeat of that last leader. He seems to be gone and he's going to come back. And all the world, notice, all the world, not just a few countries here, all the world marveled and followed the beast. And so they worshipped the dragon, Satan the devil, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who is able to make war with him, talking about a military power as well. And then continuing in verse 7, and it was granted to him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. Verse 8, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him, also referring here to that final leader, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Now this is that first beast, which is being described here in the book of Revelation, that military power. But then there is another beast being described, and that is referring to a religious power working hand in hand with that political military power. And you read about that one in verse 16 of chapter 13. And he, that religious power, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. And that religious power, causing that upheaval, is also being described in the book of Revelation chapter 17. There it's being described as a fallen woman, riding that political power. And we read in verse 18 of Revelation 17, and the woman whom you saw is that great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth. Now this system is called Babylon the Great. It's talking about a system, a religious system, also an economic system. It's also referring to the city. You might say the religious capital of that city, built on 7 hills. And then it goes on to say in chapter 18 and in verse 3, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her, that fallen woman's fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And then in verse 23 of the same chapter, and the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore, because it's going to be destroyed when Christ returns. And the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore, for your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. So here you have it, a worldwide movement of a autocratic dictatorship, both of a religious and economic and also military and political nature. We are being prepared right now to come to that point where we accept all of that, unless we are looking to God for help, because God is there to help us. He has told us that He can protect us when we come out of this system, when we are not going to participate in this wrong system, which is going to make us victims of a power which will be absolutely, totally, and completely contrary to what God says in His Word. For you to understand what is happening here, because these systems, these powers have been identified. We have prepared a free booklet on the book of Revelation. It is called The Mysteries of the Book of Revelation. Please order a free copy of this booklet. You can also read it online, because you must know not only what is going to happen, but also how you can escape, because there is a way of escape, so that you don't have to be part of these terrible developments which are going to take place. So thank you very much for listening. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by The Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.